Welcome to Film Bites, the podcast where a lad and his dad talk about films they've just watched.
The next film we're going to talk about is an absolute classic.
Yes.
It's Night of the Living Dead, George A. Romero's first picture. The picture that's seminal in so many ways that started the whole modern genre of zombies.
Zombies as we know it, with a lot of the rules.
Exactly that. And we happened to come across this on an app on Apple TV. We know it's available for download off Prime Video and Apple and all that kind of thing. But we just stumbled across it and thought, you know what? We're going to give this a watch. I haven't seen this since I was about 12 or 13. I hadn't remembered a lot of it, in all honesty. And so we were able to put this on pretty much an authentic way of watching this.
Oh, yeah.
Full black and white.
It was very close.
And I tell you what, there's a lot of good still in this film that still translates today. We have all the usual tropes that you expect to see. But at this time, brand spanking new. And again, we talked about in the Barbie movie what subverts expectations. Well, this was the movie that started all that.
Oh, yeah. It was, at the time, radical.
Yeah.
Because it introduces you to two white characters. One male, one female. And I think right from the get-go, what do you expect? The male's going to be protecting the female from whatever danger lurks. In this setting, we see our main characters basically in a graveyard. What do you expect?
Yeah, they've gone to lay flowers on a grave for a relative. And as they're doing so, this figure from the distance starts walking towards them.
Now, this is where one of our characters, the male in this part, says one of the most iconic lines in horror movie cinema.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
It's an excellent line. And I've got to say, that's pretty much it for Barbara. I think Barbara as a character, I don't think it's aged particularly well. I think that it was supposed to be showing trauma and showing how it can affect someone in the middle of the apocalypse. And not just that, but also it's a moment where you kind of feel for the character. It's someone that's been victimized, and also it's a character that is just there. I'm going to be honest, she's more of a nuisance in my opinion, which is a shame because I understand what the idea was around it. Her fate is still confusing to me to this very minute of thinking about it. But you've got to say it lures in the audience to believe something.
I think this is where the beauty of Romero's cinematography comes in. The way that it's shot, the length of time it takes for this first dramatic event to take place, it's patient. And
it draws you in.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think it really does provide the blueprint for a lot of things like Walking Dead and some of the stuff that obviously subsequently followed. Because the film is shot on black and white, it gives it this soft, kind of deeper tone than you get with some of the all-out blood and gore zombie movies later. So you're drawn into it in a little bit more of a fantastical way. And I think as we get what happens in the graveyard and subsequently how Barbara ends up in the house, it's played so patiently but so well. I think there are similarities with Jack Torrance's wife in The Shining.
Yeah, definitely.
In the way that she really isn't given lots to play with and she's just an emotional wreck throughout.
Which is a shame considering, the original source material for that character. But I think the difference here is that it wasn't so much focusing on Barbara.
Exactly. So when we're in this house, she meets up with our main character,
Ben.
And this is where things really get interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
Not from a zombie perspective.
No.
But from the social perspective, especially of that time. So you have a strong black male character.
Yes, as the lead.
And I think his acting performance, I've forgotten the actor's name for the minute.
It's Dwayne Jones.
Dwayne Jones.
Dwayne Jones, sorry, I do apologise.
I think his performance is what really makes this believable,
Yeah.
this whole scenario. And it does progress as the night goes on.
Oh.
So you get paranoia, anxiety, as the number of zombies builds up.
And also doubts, which in a group of people, that becomes a conflict.
You get these wonderful little sequences of a TV,
Yes.
which picture-in-picture at the time might have been quite difficult to produce on such a huge
I
production.
imagine so, yes.
There's very similar vibes to War of the Worlds in the sense that this whole apocalypse as it's unfolding builds throughout. So we hear it from the radio and we see it on the television. It's very cleverly done. It's done in that kind of building slowly throughout. This sense of doom and menace that the whole picture presents.
I think with the cinematography and score of the movie, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's also almost like a stamp in history where there's so many reference points now where we go back to those types of scores and that cinematography and use it for things like The Walking Dead and particularly other things as well, like the, not Night of the Living Dead, but Zack Snyder's Day of the Dead. Day of the Dead has a lot of Romero-esque themes that play it out as well.
It was a remake of Romero's own sequel.
Which you have to respect that actually they did a very good job in capturing that.
It's one of the few updates that has done its job properly,
Oh, yeah.
in all honesty. That one certainly captured the big elements of the story, that one being set in a much different location. I think the thing about this one is that it's quite claustrophobic.
Yes.
Because of where it's set.
Despite it being quite a big house.
And when you get other characters introduced, that level of claustrophobia really does pivot.
Yes.
We get some really shocking acts of violence in this.
I mean,
especially for the time.
Yes. I mean, we saw Ben try to snap Barbara out of being in a panic state by basically whacking her across the face.
It was brutal.
Yeah. Which, whilst it's shocking and kind of makes you chuckle because of how shocking it is, you don't know how to react. Even now, that stood out as a scene that was like, oh wow, this has some impact. Ultimately, he's just trying to protect her, which could have arguments, but at the same time, if you're in that state and you don't know what she's going to do, I understand from both perspectives why it could be problematic and why it also could be, in a situation like that happening, the right thing to do. It's a muddled mess in that situation, but at the same time, that is the point.
Yes.
It's made to make you feel a reaction. It is there to make discussion. The whole movie is. I mean, the main character is a black man who can actually think, because let's be honest, previous adaptations or looks at how a black man should be in movies is either the waiter, the cleaner, the member of staff at a bar, the wait. You know, they were very stereotypical.
With notable exceptions like Sidney Poitier and.
Oh, Sidney Poitier stood out.
That's what this film manages to do very well. It's the kind of film also that found its way to the drive-in movie theatres in the US and did that for a long period of time, generating a massive cult status. And everything in this film has got all the ingredients to understand exactly why that was the case. The build-up and subsequent finale of this piece, which we're not going to talk about. Because
even to this day, I think people, if they don't want to watch the whole movie, to understand why that ending is so heavily talked about in, the cult classic audience and also horror audiences, it's because of how strong it is of a socio-political time, but also even now how it's affecting.
Yeah.
Because if you look at both angles, inside and outside the house, of what happens, it's a jaw-dropping moment in every way. But I also do wonder, what would the audience's reaction be in the cinema in 1968?
Oh, I bet it was a thrill.
I think they probably cheered, which is not the reaction they should be doing.
I get that to some extent, because I think this was a largely younger audience, though.
Yeah,
and a lot of people. The only kind of touchstones that a lot of people have had were more towards the vampire movies of the Hammer stuff. Yeah, so to see this really quite dark, dour, small American project,
and it's groundbreaking.
It is. I thoroughly enjoyed the film.
It stood out against the rest.
You can understand why everybody goes back to it.
The
starting point, whatever their new zombie feature should be.
It's a blueprint.
It really is. So if you can track this film down, track it down on Prime or on Apple TV or whatever, then please do so, because this film is outstanding.
To give a few, it's on BBC iPlayer free of charge. It's on ITVX if you have that as well. Prime Video and Apple TV for $3.49. It is absolutely incredible in the sense of a blueprint, but also it's a talker. It's definitely a talking point, and to have a character so prevalent throughout the entire movie, he probably has the most dialogue as well. I think that it was a very intriguing idea. Do I think it's aged well? I think that there's still a lot that has. There's obviously a few that haven't. I think there's probably a good jump scare in there as well, which is like, oh, okay. I can see where that's also a blueprint of how to scare your audience. But again, it's that build, it's that slow pressuring feeling that's almost enclosing and crushing you in a sense. But it's very well done. It's a great exploration into the human mind as well, as to how you'd go about things. But also it shows characters at their worst moment and how they would get through the night. And I think that is an incredible, movie to have around in '68, because we had horror movies with hammer horror. You had the mindlessness of things just to see how it plays out. And with Night of the Living Dead, it's very much a question of humanity and also the political spectrum of things.
If you've enjoyed our podcast, please consider liking and subscribing for future episodes. Smash the like notification bell if you're on YouTube. Your support means the world to us. Please help us spread the word to grow the podcast. Until we meet again, Film Biters, we'll be watching. Will you?